Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, as we read letters from the voyages of St. Frances Cabrini as she traveled around the Western Hemisphere sharing the good news of Christ. Hello, Catholic pilgrims, and welcome back. Yesterday, we kind of got the pep talk before the big trip. Today, it's the same date, but we get more of the play-by-play of the trip. In the song A Whole New World from the movie Aladdin, there's a line that says, "With new horizons to pursue, every moment red letter." I always thought they were singing, "With new horizons to pursue, every moment gets better." And when my girls were singing about the moment being red letter, I was confused. And we got in this whole big back and forth debate. I was like, no, they're saying gets better. And they're like, no, it's red letter. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? Well, a red letter day is a very pleasantly memorable day, and that is what Mother Cabrini is going to describe for us. Let's open to page 148. October 12th. Yesterday was a red letter day. The thought of leaving, after a stay of 4 months, our dear sisters who so edified me and whose virtues made the convent of Panama a sweet habitation, was painful. To leave those young ladies, our pupils, who endeared themselves to me by their nobleness of heart and cooperation in the cares and sacrifices extended by the sisters in their regard, who surrounded me daily to hear a few words of advice, which as yet I can hardly express in their own language, the efforts they made to overcome themselves and to render me happier each day by guessing my wishes, all this combined to render my departure more painful. The steamer was lying at a distance of 3 miles from the shore, and they all came on board to see me off. The noble and generous Señor Don Ernesto y Casa, the father of one of our dear pupils, had placed at their disposal his comfortable launch. The representatives of the heads of families in Panama and the patrons of the new school also came on board and introduced me to the captain and the head steward. They are very distinguished persons, not only on account of their social position, but for the virtues and generosities that distinguish them. From the very first moment that I arrived in Panama, they did all in their power to further the development of the school and to place its preservation and progress on a sound footing. Many were the sacrifices and acts of self-denials they made in its regard. The evening before my departure, the committee came together to assure me that during my absence, they would do everything in their power for the sisters, and even attested the same in writing, adding a letter of commendation for me to present to their friends when I reached Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and Argentine. Many ladies, our good friends, came to the port to see me off. Amongst others was the bishop's secretary, the parish priest of the cathedral, who came with good wishes, which, because they are accompanied by God's blessing, are always valuable. This good priest had been invited by our chaplain to give us benediction of the Blessed Sacrament, so that my voyage might be blessed. So many demonstrations of kindness touched my soul, indeed, and rendered more and more deeply painful my leaving Panama, a town with so many noble and generous people. On board the steamer, Messieurs Icasa, Espinosa, Delia Osa, and Lewis introduced me to the captain with many expressions of recommendation. Mr. Casa gave a finishing touch to the leave-taking by paying for the voyage and handing the tickets to the bursar himself, making sure that I should enjoy all the advantages procured for me. There was also the comical side which served to mitigate the sadness of the last moments, for the consul, Mr. Delia Osa, took the captain by the arm, saying, "You know, Mother has had no supper yet." "Of course," he said, "she shall have it presently." But Mr. Delia Osa persisted so much that the captain thought he wanted him to go to the kitchen himself for my supper. The captain was very amused and called the steward to conduct us to the dining room, but I begged him to wait a few moments, as I wished to see the sisters and children return, as the tender was leaving at once, it being 6 p.m. Night comes on with remarkable rapidity in these equatorial regions. The waving of the handkerchiefs could not be distinguished after they had gone about 50 meters, so we went to our cabins, Mother Chiara and I. These were just like a little convent. The two cabins communicated one with the other and opened, out on the deck, which is 4 meters wide and 100 long, where we can walk about freely and enjoy the air. The dining room is very near and very comfortable. We might have wished for all these conveniences, but we could hardly have expected to find them. After supper, and after having said some prayers, Mother Chiara went to bed, whilst I sat alone facing the lighthouse of Panama. Looking to the left of it, I thought I could see the sisters at recreation gazing in the direction of the steamer Mapocho, and afterward absorbed in prayers in the chapel. I also thought I could see all the 5 lamps burning, 3 before the Blessed Sacrament, and 1 each before Our Lady and Saint Joseph, which, by raising and lowering their flickering lights, seemed as though they wished to unite with the sisters in praying for a good voyage for me. I then united with you in spirit and prayed in return that you might receive the most precious graces which you need always in order that you may accomplish your mission, i.e., to lead to God all the souls that are brought into contact with you. Between 9:30 and 10 p.m., and very quietly, the steamer began to move, and having turned round, it passed in front of Flamingo Hill and made straight for the south. I continued as long as I could to look on the left-hand side of the lighthouse, but little by little, the darkness that surrounded us became so dense that everything was rendered imperceptible. Then, having lost all hope of again seeing you any longer, and of hearing your voices raised in singing the hymn of the Ave Maris Stella as an invocation and prayer for me to Our Lady, I also retired to rest. On the morning of the 12th, as soon as I arose and had said my prayers, I turned towards Panama to see if I could get a glimpse, if not of the town, at least of the coast. But the water that surrounded me was like a leaden space. The heavens were so clouded that I could not distinguish the points of the compass, which might have helped me to look in the proper direction. I then looked into the Sacred Heart, where I could see you in deep contemplation like so many inflamed seraphim in preparation for Holy Communion. It was a most consoling vision for me, and I hastened to unite myself with you in spiritual communion, offering it to the Eternal Father in union with your sacramental communion. The atmosphere seems to have changed its nature, for proceeding towards the equator, and even while on the equatorial line itself, instead of feeling the great heat which we were told to expect, we felt rather cold, so much so that we were obliged to put on heavier clothes. One would think the steamer had mistaken its route and had steered towards the North Pole instead of going to the equator. 2 blankets were not sufficient, and we had to wear shawls when on deck, but despite this I feel the cold to my very bones. I should have loved to have used those 2 cushions you had so carefully provided for me, but no matter how much I stretched my arms, I could not reach Panama to take them. I imagined also how disappointed you were to have forgotten them, but there is no need of your being upset, for everyone is so attentive to us on the steamer that we need nothing. Then, while crossing the equator, it is not becoming to wish for too many conveniences, because we are near and in a straight line with Quito, where Blessed Mariana lived in such austere penance, though this is rather to be admired than imitated. What a pity that Mother Gabriela is not here now that we are passing the equator, seeing she wished so much to see the line. It is like a shining dark blue band stretched just above a globe, and is really beautiful to behold. The sea seems to end there. To one of the lady passengers who desired to see the line, the merry company placed a thread across a pair of eyeglasses so that she thought she really saw a great beam dividing the 2 hemispheres. However, notwithstanding this joke, the combination of sky and water forms such a beautiful spectacle that one would think it was the actual line of division, where the south begins, and where a 2-fold nature appears to exist. For whilst the thermometer registers 27 centigrades, the air is so cold that it caused us to shiver. You must not think it is always like this. Everyone is surprised at this phenomenon. I am not so surprised, accustomed as I am now to see so many changes from the hand of God, who, in the economy of his most holy providence, always has new wonders for those who completely abandon themselves to him. I, in fact, rejoice to be able to give you a new description of these equatorial regions, of which I have heard hardly anything, except that the heat is excessive and unbearable. It might be that the lily of Quito, The Blessed Mariana, from her sepulchre in the Andes, or rather from heaven where she sits happily at the side of her loving Jesus, sent us this fresh breeze to mitigate the heat of the voyage, which we undertook from Panama in honor of St. Rose of Lima, the patroness of America. We shall visit her tomb and receive Holy Communion at her altar. That's all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. Tomorrow, Mother arrives in Guayaquil, Ecuador, which, amazingly enough, my daughter just got back from there at the time of this recording. So I will see you back here soon to hear about Ecuador. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.